Ryomen Sukuna is referred to as the strongest sorcerer in Jujutsu Kaisen's history. He became known as the King of Curses after slaying the golden age of Jujutsu sorcerers. Now, having survived the consequences of time thanks to a technique that let him split his soul into 20 indestructible fingers, Sukuna returned to the modern age of sorcerers when his finger is eaten by our protagonist YUJI Itadori. In this video, you'll see Ryomen Sukuna like never before. Grab your favorite snacks because this one's gonna pull you in. Let's start from the very beginning. 1,000 years before the start of the story, Sukuna ate his twin in the womb because his mother was unable to provide them with food to eat. Sukuna's true form had 4 arms and 2 mouths, immediately making him an outcast and the unwanted child. Thus began Sukuna's life of loneliness and resentment of others. This created in Sukuna a feeling of hatred and contempt for all people and even for life itself. During his life, Sukuna became a Jujutsu sorcerer of malicious intent. He killed many of the sorcerers of the golden era of Jujutsu. Sukuna ruled the Heian era, annihilating multiple clans as well as anyone else in his way. Before he passed, Sukuna met a sorcerer named Kenjaku and entered a binding vow with him. This vow would allow Sukuna to live on after death, with the caveat that Sukuna's soul would be split into his 20 fingers and become a cursed object. Sukuna's hatred and condescension toward other people would eventually bring him into severe conflict with his first wrestle, YUJI. YUJI and Sukuna's relationship began in a highly hostile manner. When YUJI ingested Sukuna's finger, both of them discovered that YUJI had control over Sukuna. Anyone else would have died if Sukuna didn't want them as their vessel. This was due to YUJI's complicated bloodline. YUJI was the spiritual nephew of Sukuna, as the twin that Sukuna ate in the womb was later reincarnated as YUJI's father, Jin. The main hero and the main villain would remain at odds, with Sukuna wishing nothing more than YUJI's suffering or downfall, and YUJI wanting Sukuna to vanish completely. Due to the overwhelmingly immeasurable strength possessed by the King of Curses, YUJI only experiences more and more heartbreak and guilt from Sukuna's actions. This really came to a head when Sukuna took over YUJI's body in Shibuya. He destroyed part of the city with his power and swapped back to YUJI so he could bear witness to the damage he inadvertently caused. This was part of Sukuna's plan to eventually take over Megami, who would be a much more compliant vessel than YUJI. In Chapter 212, he took over Megami and confronted YUJI physically for the first time. There, the two's ideological differences would clash. With YUJI wondering why people like Sukuna can't just live normally, Sukuna responded that humans exist to be devoured and destroyed. The King of Curses then left the battlefield, mocking YUJI's miserable face, setting an emotional tone that would continue between them. Then in Shinjuku Showdown battle, Sukuna became the final antagonist as he battled all the available sorcerers who could even stand a chance against him. It seemed that nobody could beat the legendary King of Curses. Even Satoru Gojo, who had confidently declared his superiority over Sukuna in Episode 2. In the end, he was defeated as well. Whether he could have defeated Gojo without Maharaga will always be debated in the fandom. But the Gojo vs Sukuna battle ended with only one clear triumph. Sukuna briefly showed some honor by praising the dead Gojo and promising to remember him forever. But the next attack quickly brought the King of Curses back to his usual arrogant self. Gojo's attack certainly weakened Sukuna, but he was still able to fight off, defeat, and kill multiple Jujutsu sorcerers. The massacre from Sukuna became known in the fandom as the Sukuna cycle, a phenomenon where a new contender would join the fight, and Sukuna would quickly dispatch them. Then we come to the most important event in our story, YUJI vs Sukuna. YUJI's domain expansion is the exact inverse of Sukuna's domain expansion. YUJI takes Sukuna into his mysterious, albeit initially harmless domain, letting the King of Curses walk through his memories as YUJI explains his outlook on life and death, summarizing YUJI's new belief that he now finds that how someone dies doesn't matter. It's only how they live. YUJI remarks that the only difference is that he had his grandfather, who showed him how it felt to be safe and protected, something Sukuna could never experience in life. Sukuna remarks that the words YUJI is speaking make sense to him, but elicit no emotional response. That was never how he lived life. For the King of Curses, Life was like social Darwinism, the survival of the fittest. Whoever was strong was the person who made the rules and decided who was right. YUJI and Sukuna are complete opposites, and Sukuna cannot easily disregard YUJI or his beliefs. In the end, Sukuna passes on, but he encounters Mahito on the roadway of souls before his soul entirely dissipates. Mahito reveals the truth behind Sukuna's actions. Sukuna didn't become a monster for no reason. He became an abomination seeking revenge. To get revenge against all the people who hated him, Sukuna became who he was. At first, he remarks that this changes nothing. This was always going to be his nature. However, seemingly motivated by Yuji's words, Sukuna suddenly realizes this was never the case. He did have two different chances to decide how to live. Sukuna now sees that the way he was living life, rejecting love, being alone, and wasting people's lives for no reason wasn't correct because he couldn't defeat YUJI in the end. YUJI was a far weaker sorcerer than Sukuna, but because of how YUJI lived his life, he could still defeat Sukuna. Sukuna's social Darwinistic mindset proves that YUJI's way is right. As a result, Sukuna chooses to try life again, but in a new way. Jujutsu Kaisen features the theme of going north or south when someone dies. South means they want to remain behind and die as they are. North implied they would reincarnate as a new being, a new self. And Sukuna decides to abandon his old mindset and goes north. With Sukuna, Yuji's character arc turned back around. Gege uses Sukuna's transformation to show this. Due to Yuji's enlightenment, he can reach the King of Curses and present him with the opportunity to retry living. But this time, finding the love he was denied. With Urami by his side, it may be possible that the former King of Curses can live a better life in his rebirth. This is how Sukuna's story ends, moving on to find a way to understand love.